This just in, you are looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the
Undoubtedly, 9/11 shook our nation to its very foundations. Those hard attacks had consequences that forever changed the course of the nation and its citizens. Airport security has never been more detailed. Surveillance cameras are as abundant as trash cans. Fear took hold of the nation. But what is this fear, and how can we define it? Well, considering that Al-Qaeda, a radical Islamist terrorist organization, was responsible for this attack and several more, it is understandable to attribute fear to extreme Muslims. But which Muslims are extreme? What does Muslim even look like? Psychologically, people fear what they don't understand, and it's clear that the citizens of the United States, especially the youth, don't have such a broad understanding of the second most popular religion in the world. What we are dealing with here is a fear of Islam, Islamophobia.
In the weeks after 9/11, President Bush passed the USA Patriot Act, which stands for Uniting and Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism. This act was aimed to facilitate procedures to arrest domestic and international terrorists, such as hastening legal trials and broadening the definition of a terrorist. This act was passed in 4 days, extremely rapid for such a monumental decision. While the Patriot Act and other defensive measures were widely endorsed in the months after 9/11, growing public sentiment reached 68% against the act. Although the U.S. government had the right intentions in mind, it restricted some civil liberties that are ensured by the Constitution in the process. Several of its most prominent policies, including Section 215, the Lone Wolf provision, and the roving wiretaps provision, expired last June.
As you can imagine, in the period following 9/11, Muslims had very little privacy. The FBI took over 1,000 U.S. resident Arab Americans into custody for no official charge. These people often experienced extended periods of incarceration, including abuse both physically and mentally. Under no circumstances was this constitutional, but when the American public and government joined forces on an issue, very little can be done to stop them. Political jargon aside, this act and several others, clear forms of institutional discrimination against Muslims, enabled structural discrimination in mass quantities. It essentially backed the growing anti-Muslim sentiment around the country with legal justification, adding fuel to the fire. Even with the expiration of the Patriot Act, Muslims are still not truly welcomed, and nowhere is this more evident than in our high schools. Young Muslim women are repeatedly harassed for their headscarves, called hijabs, but this is not your common form of bullying. Some teachers themselves take part in alienating Muslim students. One student was threatened with disciplinary action if she did not remove her hijab. Another was sent to the principal for simply drawing an image of 9/11. Already harboring minor resentment, the students now feel justified to harass their peers, often resulting in emotional trauma for Muslim high schoolers. Cases from Delaware to Minnesota to Oklahoma all spell out similar trends. Blinded by anger, members of the school community cannot distinguish suicide bombers from freshmen and sophomores. Just last September, a 14-year-old Muslim student named Ahmed Mohammed decided to bring a homemade clock to school to show his friends. One of the teachers got suspicious and notified school officials. The police department eventually got involved and ended up handcuffing Ahmed and interrogating him for nearly an hour and a half.
Ahmed, let me ask you about what happened to you this week. Why do you think your teachers, who knew you. You were this great student. Why do you think they reacted the way they did when they saw this clock that you had made at home? Why did they assume it was a hoax bomb?
Because I'm Muslim.
Because you're a Muslim. Why do you think that?
There's a lot of stereotypes for people who are foreigners and they have Muslim names. Well, not specifically Muslim names, but names mainly in Islam.
So you don't think that would have happened to one of your classmates had they brought a clock into school?
No, this wouldn't happen to any of my classmates.
You're sure of that?
Yes.
Why do you think the police officer said to you when he saw you, I believe one of the 4 police officers, he said, he looked at you and he said, "That's who I thought it was"?
Yes. I think it was because of my race and because of where I'm from and because of my name.
And how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel different, like I didn't belong there, and it made me feel like I was a threat to them.
We have to stop ignoring Islamophobia and realize that it is a very real form of racism. Muslims are portrayed as uneducated barbarians. 29% of Muslims say that their biggest problem is the negative views about them. Another 20% say that it is the discrimination they experience. Islamophobia has now gone from a simple social stereotype to a form of concerted oppression. Teachers refuse to challenge their Muslim students or give them extra help. Recently, in 2013, a young Muslim woman was fired from Hollister for refusing to take off her headscarf. These are the new cycles of oppression in today's society. Job and educational opportunities are wrongfully being kept from American Muslim citizens. This oppression directly stems from the socialization and prejudice that Muslims are evil. 51% of Americans believe that the underlying trait of Muslims is fanaticism. Students are disproportionately policed and somehow viewed as less American. Reform in a nation starts with the next generation, us. Current American teenagers are simply unaware of Islam, which happens to be the fastest growing religion in the world. We're better to influence our youth than in our classrooms. There is a reason Islam is such a popular religion, but some individuals simply take it too far. This does not mean every Muslim will be a terrorist. Luckily, our future seems to lie in good hands. Millions of Americans came to Ahmed Mohammed's defense, including President Obama. The vast majority of court rulings in Muslim discrimination cases have been for the citizens. New legislation is being passed to protect the civil rights of Muslims as well. In a poll of the St. Peter's Prep junior class, 72% claim to feel indifference towards Muslims instead of fear. An overwhelming 88.9% of the students believe that only the few extremists, not the religion of Islam itself, are to blame for the widespread violence. This worldly perspective we have at Prep is one of my core social ethics, and I hope to spread this around the nation. Instead of being colorblind, we should be color aware and accepting of our peers. This only enriches our diversity. The primary sources of information for our students is the media and the classroom, at 31% each. This is where the solution lies. Organizations such as Coexist have already started to advocate embracing diversity in the classroom. This directly ties into another one of my core ethics, education. We need to educate our high schoolers about the background of Islam and the beneficial aspects of the religion. We need to teach them to view media with a cautious eye, rather than an embellishing one. The amount of teenagers watching this year's election has reached a record-setting number, and while our youth should be more involved in the proceedings of the country, Trump mania has widely encouraged xenophobia and has spread fear. Too often, teachers stray away from discussing Islam because of its controversial nature. High schoolers are hungry for knowledge, and if they do not receive it in a structured environment, they will receive it from the media, which sways with the public sentiment. With a stronger foundation in a worldly perspective, students will be able to question Islamophobia's legitimacy and question the legitimacy of the media. I encourage my fellow classmates to look up a historical background of Islam. It is more than jihad and ISIS. If we understand our Muslim peers today, I have no doubt that we will be able to collaborate and cooperate side by side in the future. Thank you.